Some of you guys may have recognized her and me from past shows. She's been doing these with me since she was 4 years old. We've been doing coral shows. And she's going to do about 10 minutes at the end of the talk and talk about what this has done for her as growing up in terms of her personality and becoming a little entrepreneur and wanting to be a marine biologist. I'm going to start talking about how we do aquarium automation, redundancy in our 2,500 square foot coral farm up in upstate New York. It's very challenging given the fact of the weather extremes in upstate New York and doing the inside. So go ahead, next slide, Soph. So we are Bull Reef Aquaculture LLC. We do have a booth down here on the end of the corner down by the raffle area. Some of you guys have stopped by. We appreciate that. We are a coral aquaculture and research facility. We are not a store. We primarily provide corals to retail shops, zoos, public aquariums, that like. We're in upstate New York, central New York, a little bit east of Utica. We're pretty much dead center on the thruway between Albany and Syracuse. And actually, if you're going on the thruway, you will pass our barn, and you will see it when you go past the Herkimer exit. It's a little bit past there, and you'll see a big brown barn with metal barn with a green roof, and that's us. Not really well labeled, though. So we're family-owned or operated. We've been officially established in 2018. I've been doing reefing in the hobby since the early 1980s, and I haven't stopped. I've worked in multiple stores over the years. I went to school for a little bit for marine biology. I could talk to you guys about that over beer sometime. Next one. Some images of our farm. So that's the external, a little bit after the snowfall there, but that's what the barn looks like. Thruway's right behind it. So this is our entry room, our first big grow-out area. This is about a 1,800-gallon system altogether. There's 5 tanks there together. The bigger ones are 8 foot long by 3 foot deep by 15 inches high. We're growing all colonies in there. Different colonies in each system. You can see some pictures of acroporas here. The front's more for some of the frags you see out at the bigger ones you guys are seeing out in our tank there. Those are growing out here a little further. These 2 tanks in the corner here, those are all acropora, 100%, and there's pretty large colonies in there. This is all one system. This is one system, and this system actually goes through the wall, and there's another 5-foot frag tank behind with all the acroporas in it growing. Here's kind of a shot down to the side of this system going on the back wall, and you can see we got 2 other smaller tanks down there, and then there's one sump here taking care of all that. Some nice acropora colonies. Our Disney, everybody seems to buy from us all the time. And this is our back room, more of our work room. That's the tank that's connected to those up there. And this originally was bought as a fish system. It's very nice. It's got 3 tiers. It's got a whole bunch of flow through it. But over time, we started growing so much more and more coral, we had to start putting more over into this fish system. So it worked out to be a really nice soft coral trap, working for our euphyllias, things like that, where we need lower flow. Tied to that, there's some anemones. So this is all one system here. So that's basically our shop, and then we have storage in the back. Next one. So we grow a lot of coral. We also provide services to our clients. We do consulting, education services. We work with schools, other research endeavors as well. Large-scale aquarium systems design and engineering. So we're helping zoo build out a big system here currently over the summer up north where we are. Advanced automation services, livestock and equipment acquisition for our other clients, a lot of times mainly for school systems and zoos. And then maintenance and troubleshooting services. So again, we support zoos, public aquariums, schools, universities, research and education programs, and local fish stores. So if you guys know of any of these people that are looking for somebody like us, thank you. Thank you. You know, definitely let us know who we are. Let them know who we are. So why we automate? Advantages, stability, right? Stability is the key thing in reef tanks. Keeping reef tanks, it's all about keeping water chemistry proper, temperature, lighting. But we don't believe in too much stability, I should say. I like a little bit of fluctuation in my parameters. We'll talk about that a little more. I think it gives us more resilience in our corals. Some of you guys have taken our corals home over the years, may have found that they can really take the swings because we're giving them a little stress. We're not giving that perfect, water chemistry. Alerting, get notified when something isn't right. We had the power go out last night. There was a huge microburst up in Frankfort, New York, where we are. Power went out 4 hours. My tanks all made it through just fine. We're down here. I got alerts on my phones. All those systems are up and running this morning perfectly fine. Although her bedroom got flooded, which wasn't good because water came in over the thing, but that's a whole other story. Efficiency, the more you automate, the less you have to do each day manually. I have automated pretty much everything that I can, and I've also scaled back on some of the things. I've tried everything. I'm a computer scientist and an engineer by PhD, and that's what I teach. So I've really applied that to this, and we'll talk more about that here in a bit. And then precision, right? For dosing, water testing, automatic top-off. Disadvantages. Can't talk about something without talking about the disadvantages. This list is a little bigger, but I couldn't go through everything, right? We only have so much time. So upfront expense, it's going to be expensive to automate, right? You have controllers, you have sensors, you have equipment, all this stuff costs money, but it is worth it in the long run. It's let me take this very large coral farm we're running in our case for her and I to just operate, you know, and when I can walk away for a weekend and just kind of have my 10-year-old go in there and feed stuff while we're gone, and it still works. But I also teach full time and I run another business, so it's allowed me to do this and really move forward on this as an individual with children and bring them into it, right? Without any other real help. Maybe for some heavy lifting once in a while, I got to call some people. Steep learning curve, right? You do need some technical skills. You got to be willing to read the manuals, you know, to go through this stuff to really actually use it to its fullest potential. Hardware, you depend on fails. So, you know, we are operating in a harsh operating environment. Most of these controllers in our hobby are hobbyist grade. They are not precision, you know, lab grade stuff. So we have to realize that these things are going to fail. And I have failures all the time. I just had to replace, you know, something before I left. It's never fails. I think it was a calcium reactor regulator. Single vendor dependence, availability of parts. So once you start going down the path of Apex or whoever, right? We chose Apex just because it's not like they're giving us anything or promoting us. 2016, when I started the farm up, that was the big game in town. If you go back to Reef Central, way back, we're talking like 2006, 2007-ish, I was the one that started the Linux Reef controller. So I started trying to build my own as a computer science project for my bachelor's degree, as my capstone. But trying to build your own pH sensors, you know, ORP sensors, all these things is quite difficult as a, you know, college student at that time with no money. So I ended up learning a lot doing that. I had a bunch of tanks automated in a way with lighting and stuff, but it eventually went into I needed something a little more robust, so I ended up going down the Apex route. Now we have hydros, a few other options, so it's worth considering and seeing what is best fit for your needs. Software firmware logic bugs, I've had a few of these over the years. I kind of find them because my network is so large and I report them to Neptune. Some of these are pretty catastrophic. Some of them are just a pain in the butt. How many of you guys have Mobius? Anyone? How many of you guys have Ecotech Radions? How many of you guys have had those things turn on in the middle of the night? Or one comes on and three go off and all this other stuff. I had that going on for a while because we run all Gen 6 Pros on the farm. The way I fixed it, I had to buy an MXM. I had to put it on my Apex. I had to have my Apex control the clock. Once I did that, I don't have those problems anymore. And it also allowed me to do a lot more stuff that we're going to talk about here in a few in terms of seasonal lighting and all that I could do through the Apex that I really couldn't do too well just by using Mobius. Automation creep. Sometimes it just doesn't need to be automated. I've tried automating everything. I've even automated water changes, right? And there's some things you just don't want to automate. But it's nice. You can automate it, but you just don't want it. The more you automate, the more you depend on your automation to work. Please let this sink in your head. The more you automate, the more you depend on it to work, right? Because if you're depending on your dosing to do what it's supposed to do, if it breaks, you're going in there now and doing this by hand, right? There's a lot of things. So that's a big thing. Keep mindful of your automation creep. Keep mindful that, you know, if I don't need to automate it, maybe I just put that aside. Maybe that's just a fun little experiment. Okay, next one. Okay, the basic thing. An aquarium has no automation at all. What is the single piece of automation equipment that will make the biggest impact on the aquarium and the aquarist? This is a question for you guys. ATO. Thank you. Next slide. Auto top off, evaporated water. You know, I was doing this since the 80s, running buckets, all that good stuff, topping off when the return pump, blowing bubbles in. Oh, crap, I got to go down and pour some water in my sump. You know, this gets rid of that. I also am a big firm believer in kalkwasser. That's the base thing I use for calcium. I'm going to actually go over my 3-tiered redundancy for calcium and alkalinity supplementation. But I start with kalkwasser, and I do kalkwasser through my ATO. Before, I used to do drip method out of buckets when I was younger. But you know, once I finally got an ATO, that little Tunzi ATO was a miracle for me. And then that started the automation process from there, right? It's the freshwater tanks, brackish water tanks, anything, ATO. How many times have you gone to a restaurant and see the goldfish tank halfway down because no one's putting the thing in there, right? We just went to hibachi like up north a couple weeks ago and just looked at the goldfish tank. Put an ATO on it. No one has to worry about it. Okay, no wild swings, salinity. This is the one thing I try to keep fairly stable in my tanks is salinity. Try to keep it around 35, 36 ppt, you know, 1.025, 026. Other than that, I do some swings. Dragon Ball? You play Dragon Ball? I love Dragon Ball. So Roshi trained Goku by running up, you know, mountains with water bottles and all that stuff. Here's my 10-year-old son. He's got a little, what's he got? He's got his lobster tank, right? And that's all the way up on the 3rd floor. All the RO in the house is down in the basement. And this is what I used to do. I get my exercise by running buckets. If you're doing 5 gallons, it's best to carry 2 so you balance yourself, right? Otherwise, it's pretty hard, so you always carry 2 5-gallons. He's only got about a gallon of water there, but we're just kind of playing a little joke here. So running water, it's good exercise. So ATO does one thing, but you can get your exercise this way if you don't exercise much else. Okay, so what we automate at Bull Reef. RODI production, that's a big one. We have a lot of water we have to make, right? We've probably got about 5,000 gallons total of systems, and it's odd enough. What do you think we need more water for? Making saltwater or evaporation? What is it? Evaporation. And I use that, and we'll talk about my heating and cooling whole regiment there and how it really actually all goes back to dehumidification, evaporation, so I can add more calc, right? It's all part of the plan. Sensing, right, pH, conductivity, ORP, temp, the general stuff you can get out of your probes. Dosing, 2-part plus trace, and calcium reactors plus CO2. And we'll get really more deeper into that in a little bit in the talk. Okay, water flow, obviously using different pumps to actually create different wave flows. That's nothing new to anybody. Water level monitoring and alerting. I got a lot of optical sensors all over the place. Sumps. I got your normal ATO sump optical sensors. Then I have a too high and a too low, because if the water gets too high, then maybe a return pump's off, so I want to kill all my UV sterilizers so they don't blow out. You got to think of the trickle-down effects. Device states, your UV skimmers, return lights, etc. Lighting, so we do seasonal, sun lunar schedules, and we do heating and cooling on a seasonal basis as well. Okay, so now we're going to get into some nitty-gritty. I'm sorry this is so small, it's a little hard to see, but I am going to provide the slides online later on for you guys so you can see these codes a little better. So this is one of the smaller RODI production areas, and this is one of our bigger ones. This is fresh water tied together. These are 55 gallons each. That makes 100 there. This is a saltwater mix. This is a 250-gallon holding tank of final stage RODI water. That's a salt water. That's the first stage. So we have horrible sulfur water. I almost thought I couldn't run reef tanks. But you guys see I'm producing pretty good corals out there. What I have to do is I have to come into the RODI. Now, when I first built the farm and I started running the RO, I ended up going through DI cartridges like every 2 to 3 weeks, just blowing them out, because we're going through 200 gallons of water easily in evaporation a week. So I ended up having to add the aeration chamber, right? So you probably read this stuff online. If you're having problems with too much CO2 in your water, or in this case, it's really sulfury, so we've got a lot of sulfide in there. We're going through the first 2 stages, right? The filter, the carbon, then we're going into the RODI stage, out of the RO, the RO stage, out of the RO into this bucket. In here, we aerate for 24 hours. And then I flip another switch that actually moves the water from here into the final holding stages, which is our final ATO water, which is then used to feed the sumps of those other systems you saw out there. So we have lines running everywhere. Those little Neptune pumps, the ATO pumps, those things can pump water a lot farther than you think, especially if it's horizontal. We're pumping water 35 feet in some places for ATO into a calc reactor. Okay, so over here I have some code. This first one is the RODI in, so I have one of the little, you can't really see it here, but it's right there. The input coming from the well is there on a relay. We can trigger that on, right? And then there's some parameters here. So we're looking at optical sensors that are all in these for high and low. So obviously I'm just going to turn it on, let it run. It's going to produce the water. And if it hits the high sensor, it's going to shut off, right? If it's the low sensor, as we're taking it out, it'll shut off something else. It will turn back that on to start filling it up again with new fresh water. So this is really a major step forward in us to actually, really automate this RODI production, because we go through so much water, and being only one person, it's hard to sit there and monitor it. There's a lot of volume here. You can see all this pile of 2 little fishies salt. Thank you, Julian. Our farm is running on 2 little fishies. Okay, here's our top-off controller. This is just the basic Apex top-off code that you get when you do the task. However, what you're going to notice is we tweak how long it's on for, because sometimes I think it sets it for 5 minutes. When you're pumping water with an ATO pump 35 feet into a 1,500-gallon system that's evaporating probably 2 gallons an hour or 3 hours or whatever, this is running every 45 minutes. So we need to increase these numbers to make sure that it's not kicking the top-off pump off before it's finished filling up to the sensor height there. Okay, next slide, Soph. You can go back a second. Here's just a bunch of the sensors, the optical sensors, to show you how many optical sensors we have to automate all this stuff in the one. That's just one system. Okay, calcium reactor automation. So I have multiple reactors. We use the reef octopuses. I also have some older corallins, which are a little more temperamental, but you can get them to work really well. If you look at that calcium reactor, what do you think that calcium reactor is rated for? How many gallons? Now this is on the full-blown Acropora system. 2 tanks, probably about 600 gallons worth of total volume. Do you think that handles 600 gallons of total volume? I'm sorry, can I pick you, Julian? That's by design. So I talked about my 3 redundancy method for calcium alkalinity. Start with kalkwasser. Even her tank, we start with kalkwasser. Until it gets to the point where you cannot hit your alkalinity mark with kalkwasser. When you start getting to that point where kalkwasser is not enough, I put on the calcium reactor. So now we have a balance between the calcium reactor and the kalkwasser. So if I'm away and say the calc needs to be topped off, I can't top it off, the calcium reactor hopefully picks up the slack, right? Or vice versa. I run out of CO2, hopefully the kalkwasser will help out. This I run using the controller method. So I have a pH probe in the calcium reactor, and then depending upon what I need my burn rate to be on the reactor media, we end up higher or lowering the pH threshold to turn on the regulator to pump the CO2 in. Right? We're not doing a drip method. I'm not counting drips. That's just this doesn't work well, and it clogs up. So I love these carbon dosers. These things are awesome. Depending on the system, we can put the bubble count, what we need in there to push into the calcium reactor. And then over here, again, it's really hard to see with this, but if pH cal is greater than, I think that's, I'll have to look over here, 7, then it's going to be on. It's going to flip on that CO2, so it's going to lower the pH in the calcium reactor and burn the media, right? If the pH cal is less than 6.9 in this instance, it's going to turn it off. So we're only doing a small threshold of variance there, but we're trying to keep that calcium reactor, let's see, is that pH? Yeah, it's pH cal. So you can see here, it's on, it's off. It's on, this is the pH inside the reactor. So it's going about 4 hours and it may shut off. It's going about 4 hours and it may shut off. Why is it doing this? Why are we seeing this trend? And you can see down here, this is our alkalinity, right? We see it here is pretty stable. Then again, it follows the same trend in terms of the trident testing the alkalinity. The pH is going for about 4 hours, where it's running on the reactor. The CO2's on, and then it shuts off. The trident tested. The alkalinity was higher than 8.5 at that time, and it may have shut off during the measurement, right? Because it didn't need to run it. So every 4 hours, we're doing an alkalinity test, and then we're comparing that in this code. If it's above 8.5, it shuts off the CO2, so we're not pumping anything else in because we don't need any more alkalinity in the system, right? So we're regulating that based on there. How we actually do this, we're not doing drip method. What I do is I get my stream. You keep using a dial, basically a gate valve right here. And you turn it just so when you see it coming out into your sump, it goes from dripping to a small stream. When it's a small stream and it's almost dripping at the end, but it's streaming through, that's where you want it. And then you start using your pH and your calcium and your CO2 regulator and your testing and your alkalinity and your automation to start turning that on and off based upon what you need it to burn at. So again, this is going with my kalkwasser first, then here based upon what I need here. So if I need a more bigger burn rate on this, like say I'm not meeting my alkalinity demands, I'm going to lower the pH threshold here from 7.0 to 6.9 to maybe 6.9 to 6.8, right? And keep going down until I find the actual mark I want to put it on. Okay, next one. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Seasonal temperature. So we primarily are trying to sell our corals to zoos, public aquariums, research, maybe people who want to try to breed these corals, right? So I did some research, and there's a very good paper out there, which I'm going to reference a little later, about doing lighting, seasonal temperature variances to make breeding happen, right? And we have to deal with this double hump temperature in order to actually make breeding happen somewhere here in December where we get above 81 point something degrees in order to make that happen, that trigger. I don't want that spawning event to happen in my systems. It's gonna kill them. It's gonna overflow it. Just snails going off half the time is a problem, right? So I still want to condition the corals with this double hump. I mean, I haven't done any research to say it's doing anything beneficial, but again, I think this is more towards my resilience. And what I'm also thinking is if I go and sell these these coral to or provide them to a zoo or a research aquarium, and they want to slowly get them up to here, they can start acclimating up in temperature, but they're already used to the seasonal change, and hopefully that'll give them an extra boost and maybe a better chance at providing a spawning event. I cannot guarantee that's going to happen. I'm just hoping to see this happen over time. It's just a scientific experiment we're doing. So what I did is I wrote a Python program after I looked at somewhere in Indonesia, kind of found a central point in the coral triangle, figuring all of our coral are somewhere from around that area, so it's an average, right? If I take the center of the coral triangle, I'm taking an average of all the temperatures or the seasonal lighting or whatever for that area. So I picked a center point in Indonesia, and I plotted the monthly temperatures over here in the apex. Now, if you go online, you can find out how to do seasonal temperature, how to do seasonal lighting. You have to go into Apex Local, go into the settings, hit the little sun, and you can get these other little menus. You can't do this in Fusion. I then transposed them over here, but what I did is I wrote a Python program. And all that Python program did is say, okay, I want my temperatures to be somewhere in this range, but I want to keep them relevant to what's going on up here. So you can see I didn't change the actual pattern over the course of the year. I just reduced the temperature accordingly to where I wanted it. Now we're running our tanks between 74 and 76 degrees and doing this double hump. We run them a little on the low side. We can probably go as low as 72 and still be good. I do this for multiple reasons. Electricity sucks. It's getting super expensive, as you all know. We're seeing a lot of people leave the hobby because electricity is getting super expensive. A lot of the things I've been doing over the last 4 years on my farm is really figuring out how to be super energy efficient with what I do. Cutting out things I don't need, not pushing my lights as hard as they need to do to actually get the lighting and the coral colors I need and getting growth. One of the things I do also is I found that heating the room, and this goes back to Anthony Calfo, the guy is awesome, his books are awesome. He's disappeared from the hobby, but he should be back, and read his book, Coral Propagation. His coral farm in Pennsylvania, and I learned this way back when I started out reading his books, not the internet, he heat the air, not the water. Heat the air, not the water. It's cheaper to heat the air than the water. But if you can bring the room temperature up to where you want to keep your tanks, and then your tank water stabilizes to that room temperature, and you keep your room temperature where you want it to be, or maybe a couple degrees higher, you'll be able to stabilize the temperature of your tanks, and your tanks will hold the temperature and stabilize the temperature of the room. So even when it's 30 below outside and the power goes out, my farm will hold to 60 degrees for a few days because the tanks are holding the temperature in this equilibrium. I don't have a heater in the farm. I'm in upstate New York. I don't have a heater in the farm. What I do is we paid a lot of money. We have a air conditioning system that dehumidifies as well. And what we did is we piped back the heat coming from the dehumidification process back into the room, and that heats the room to 76 degrees. So based upon the temperature of the room, whether it's cooling, so I keep it when I'm cooling in the summertime, I keep it to 74. My heaters barely turn on. My chillers barely turn on because I'm trying to use my ambient room temperature and my evaporation process to control the temperature. So I've significantly reduced my electric bill by doing this, by using dehumidification and air conditioning to do this stuff and just really kind of playing with the room temperatures. Corals grow fine in this. If you're worried about your electric bill, reduce the temperature, get your room temperature and try to stabilize like this. It works. I've been doing this for a few years now. So this is all code that kind of goes through that process, how to set this up. We're kind of short on time. I'm going to post these things so you guys can see these later. But you can see here, this is my temperature probe. This is only like it's like a 0.01 degree difference here. It's holding stable the whole course of the entire day. All right, so there's proof in the pudding there. Next, seasonal lighting. So got to credit the paper, which we'll reference in the end here on this one. I did some variation changes. Like a good scientist, I did replicated research. I started out replicating exactly what they did, and I started tweaking the color spectrums, the span of the lighting, and a few other things. They were using oscillations in here, and I didn't like how the oscillations worked because if you reset the lighting, or say a power outage happens, the oscillation goes back to the starting. So your intensity will go back to the starting intensity rather than where you were in that point in time. And that's why the table works much better for having a nice gradient of changing from intensity and your color patterns too. So again, in your seasonal programming, you can do your seasonal sunrise, sunset. You can do your lunar rise, lunar set, and then your lunar the day of the new moon. You have to set all these to make this work, and I'm using Gen 6 Pros and Gen 5 Pros. They all have the lunar lights, so this all works. And these will go across the seasonal patterns. And again, I set all these times based at that one location in Indonesia. Just look it up on the web. You can find the monthly times for sunrise, sunset. You do the first day of the month for each one, and then it will automatically put this in for you. So you can see I create groups for each of my lights. It's hard to read again, sorry about that. I have a daylight trigger that's a virtual outlet, and I have a lunar one. So the lunars are just doing this if moon, and this is a code you can write in Apex, all zeros then on, right? So when it sees it's supposed to be the lunar schedule, it's going to turn them on. If sun, same thing, turn on, right? So if the daylight light is on, here's how I'm actually changing my seasonal times of when the schedule starts. So I put in the parameters of when the sunrise happens and the sunset happens, and that's what if sun is working on. If the sun's supposed to be on now, it's on, right? So down here, if you look at my table, at the bottom of my table, I have if output daylight off, then off, right? So if daylight's off, then the lights should be off. So that's how we can turn them on and turn them off, and then follow the actual table schedule accordingly. I can get more into my lighting spectrums if you guys want. You can stop back at the booth. I'd be happy to talk more about what I do for lighting. The slides will be posted. You'll get my code here where you can actually input them in. We start typically at a very blue morning. Everything's blue 100%. It's pretty much AB plus with 24 and 24 on the red and green, but the whites are at 5%. And then when we hit this point here, we actually go to AB plus. So it's 24, 24 on the whites, right, plus the 24 greens in the hundreds. When we hit this peak here, I'm actually doing 14K. So I'm running, I pushed the whites all the way up to 84, I believe that is what they are. I really like growing corals in white light. I hate blues. I only did the blue because some of my vendors started complaining we didn't have enough color and they wanted me to put blues in. So I put blue in just for some of my customers to make them happy and to take pictures in blue when they need it. But we have a nice gradient that goes all the way up to a very bright daylight. So around 11 to 1, we have 14K daylight almost in there. And I think it's super important for corals to have white light. It's natural. It's like the daylight. It helps them grow better. We may not get the super color that people get out of theirs from growing them all blues, but I don't know. Just me, I'm an old school guy. I like white light, right? I came from metal halides, the old 14Ks. I love them. OK, I think we're good here unless there's questions. No? OK. What we don't automate, feeding. I've tried automated feeding. I got the little feeders, right? All that stuff. It makes you lazy. You got to enjoy the tanks, and you got to spot issues. And that's what feeding does. If you sit there and have an auto feeder running all the time, first off, most of the food goes down the overflow, right? Some of the fish don't get it. You're not getting all the fish. If some slower fish need the fish to make it all feed it up. So we feed everything by hand on the farm. She does a lot of feeding. If I'm gone, she's doing all the feeding on the tanks the whole time. Nutrient input. We are running ultra low nutrients. We have a problem with that because we have so much dense coral growth that it sucks everything out. So I do N&P dosing. Pretty much every Friday I'm adjusting my nitrogen and phosphorus. Water changes, again, makes you lazy. I've tried it. I've done it. I put the dose up. I did the in and out and all that stuff. Guess what? I'm not in siphoning the gravel. I'm not in cleaning the rocks. I'm just, I got a water change going. I know it's, and does 5 gallons a day really do anything if you're just going in and out? Is it really doing what you need it to do if you're in there actually taking 20 gallons of water out of a 100-gallon tank or whatever and pouring it out? I think unless you have something set up that this does a significant volume for you and makes it very easy for you but still efficient, and you're still going in and doing the other cleanings you need to do at the same time, then go ahead. But this is something we don't do. Cleaning acrylic, yeah, right? If somebody can automate cleaning acrylic, all of our tanks are acrylic. We do this because they're lighter, and it's me and her, and very hard to carry 250-gallon acrylic tanks or glass tanks. Also, we have railroad tracks near us, and the whole barn shakes. So I don't trust glass. When we had that earthquake a few months back here in upstate New York, my house felt like it hit a road bump at 80 miles an hour. Nothing wrong with my tanks. I don't know if I'd be able to say the same thing with glass. Right? So I buy acrylic for life. These tanks are all made by Advanced Acrylics, and the guy has done amazing stuff for us. So next, cleaning acrylic. Right? Wax on, wax off. This goes for more stuff, too, that we don't automate because there are certain things you just need to have your hands on and your eyes on, and you don't want a machine doing. You know, just the enjoyment out of doing certain things like cleaning the glass, feeding your fish. I joke that I've automated myself to the point where I'm just the janitor of my farm. I go in, I clean stuff, I clean glass, I feed the fish, I sweep the floors, I vacuum. Everything else is handled, right? I fill up jugs of things every once in a while and do stuff. Thank you all for coming. Next. Okay, some of the things we do different. Now again, I'd like to reiterate what everybody else says. In this world of the internet, I learned reefing from books. I learned reefing before the internet. In this world of the internet, you're getting so much conflicting information. So much conflicting information. You need to find a system that works for you and move forward. And you probably heard this 100 times. I'm just going to reiterate it. Over the years, I've come up with my method. I've been reefing for 40 years now, or more than 40 years. It's, you come up with ways. My first reef tank had an under-gravel filter, right, and crushed coral on it. The times have changed so much. But skimmers, they have so many crazy skimmers today. I mean, the skimmers we used to have back in the day were just big tubes with the air stone, and they just did what they did, and they worked great, right? So there's stuff you can throw money at. There's stuff you can get by with using other stuff. But again, just come up with your method. Find somebody who does it well and kind of model them. And you guys have all heard those words. No refugiums or macro. Now, I've ran refugiums. But again, with our coral volume, we're running ultra low nutrients. When I had refugiums on, the refugiums win. The macroalgae wins. Your corals will suffer at that point. It's sucking the nutrients out. It's sucking the trace out. We had to get rid of them. As soon as I got rid of macroalgae, everything flourished. Did I care about the pH drops at night? No. I don't care about the pH drops, and I'll tell you how I actually solved that a little bit too later on. Automating skimmers. They're glorified aeration devices, plain and simple. Our systems are running low nutrient. If I run my skimmers all the time, they're just hurting, not helping, right? But we do use skimmers. I use skimmers at night. When the pH drops below 8.3, the skimmers turn on. When the pH goes above 8.3, the skimmers turn off. So typically they're on at night, right, when the dip happens. Use smaller redundant skimmers. Again, I got to thank Anthony Kelfel for this one, because if you read his books, he's talking about using redundancy, right? And we believe a lot of that in redundancy in our farm. My PhD is in computer science with a big focus in security, and I'm all about redundancy, fail-safes, risk management, all that stuff. So I applied that to my farm. So basically, you'll see in all of our sumps, I have 2 skimmers instead of 1. And they're just, I size my skimmer. If I can get it in my sump and I can reach in there and work with it, it's a good enough skimmer for me, right? I know you don't really like skimmers much either as well. Yeah, thank you. I don't need a 7-foot skimmer next to my tank. No. So I put 2 of them in there, and that way, they're also toggles, so one might run on, and then the next one might come on 5 minutes later. So even if the pH comes up, maybe this other one doesn't have to come on. And again, it's about energy efficiency. If I don't need to run the skimmer 24 hours a day, why do I want that pump running? The other thing this did, how many times you got to get in there and clean the little freaking venturi with a toothpick or something because it gets clogged up with salt? I don't do that anymore. When the skimmers turn off, the venturi's filled with water, and then when they turn back on again, it cleans it out. So it's almost like a backwash. All of a sudden, I'm not cleaning venturis every week. I'm just letting them run, and they do their thing, and it was a miracle. UV on all returns. Again, this is something we do different. We do a UV on every return to any tank, but I don't oversize them. I'm actually probably undersizing them in terms of what the manufacturer states. Because think about the way the UVs are. It's about the flow rate through the UV, not passing the entire volume of your tank. I'm not going to pass 2,500 gallons of water through a UV and expect all that water to be sanitized while it's flowing around all these big 8-foot tanks and everything else. It's just not logical, right? But what I do want is any water coming out of the sump that's gone and been processed to come out fairly clean and sanitized, right? And I even have those old aqua UVs, right? And they had the little wiper in them that rust on salt water. Take the wiper out. You got a 1/2-inch NPT thread on the end. Go and buy an RODI plug, screw it in, and I feed my calcium reactors off of those. Now my calcium reactors don't have algae problems growing in them. They're always clean because they're feeding UV sterilized water. So they come off every return, and I don't run a lot of flow through my sumps. I like a slow flow through my sump so I can process the water. So if you got, say, 600 gallons per hour coming out your return, or 300, whatever you're doing, size your UV for that. Don't go buying a 80-watt UV if you don't need it for that return side. And then make sure you have just a UV on every single return. That's what we do. It seems to work great. We have no algae problems, no bacterial issues, no fish problems with ick or anything like that. We really haven't had any diseases at all. We also have a strict quarantine process, but I've always used UVs. I think they're great, and I won't stop using them. You got to change the bulb every year, though. Change the bulb. Okay, control the temperature of the room, not the water. I've already talked about this, so I kind of don't have to go through this one again. Everything is about the dehumidification, though. Like I said, when they came and spec'd out my farm to custom build the unit, which is actually made for hotel swimming pools, again, it does AC and it does dehumidification. AC is just a dehumidification process, right? And then we move things back in. But I had them oversize it. All my tanks are open tops, no tops on them. I want the evaporation to suck the water out of there so I can pump more calc back into the tanks, right? So it's just all by design. Get the water out, and that way I can also heat the room in the wintertime through the dehumidification process. Next. Skimmer automation. This just is going, again, against the pH. So when it hits below 8.3, it's going to turn on. Now, this is great. You're seeing about every 45 minutes to an hour a spike here in the pH. As it goes down and it comes back up. You can tell, we're daylight, full light, and we're going down in the night mode, and then we're going back up. The lights kick back on, it's going back up. But what are those little spikes happening in such good little increments, such timely increments? Kalkwaster dosing. Because we're just, the pH probe's in the sump. I don't care what you're doing. It's still going to mix around in there. We have pretty good mixture in our sump. So every time the ATO goes off, we're getting a little bit of spike in pH near the sensor because it's just dumping right in there, right? Thank you. Next. Okay, let's go on to redundancy. So again, we just had a 5-hour power outage last night because we had a huge microburst go through. Farm's perfectly fine this morning. Everything's running. I looked at the cameras, looked at all the apexes. Everything's good. We have battery backups on every single return pump. And then we also have a backup generator. That I have to roll out and plug in. But what I'll do is I'll tend to kind of gauge a power outage. If I think it's only going to go 4 to 6 hours, I can get by on the battery backups. If it's going to go longer, I'm going to roll out the generator. The generator will power the whole entire farm, including the HVAC system. Heating. Again, when they actually kick on, we still have heaters, titanium heaters in the sumps. We use JBJ chillers on the lines as well, and they're just coming in a loop back into the sump just to kind of create that. We don't want to chill the tanks. We want to chill the sump and let the tank water go back into the tanks to kind of equalize things out. We have the Inkbird controllers plugged into the Apex. The Apex controls when the Inkbird controllers turn on. The Inkbird controllers then have a threshold for how high they will go. So we have double redundancy on our temperature probes, or our heaters. We also use the EB4s instead of the EB8s. You guys know they still make EB4s, right? EB4s are awesome. They could take a higher load than the EB8. So if you have like we have 600 watt titanium heaters, we can plug those into the 20 amp circuits, and there's 4 plugs, plus I can have my chiller plugged in, and that's going to handle the load on a 20 amp circuit. Versus the EB8s don't have as many high capacity outlets on them, so you may burn out an outlet quicker on an EB8. So I use the 4s just because they can handle the extra loads of these higher heaters. The JBJ chillers, they have their own internal thermostat, which we can regulate the temperature on them, but they're also plugged into the EB4s and controlled via the temperature probe. Next one. This is just, our battery array. This is just for that one big tank. You can see they're all over the place. And then they're on the back walls. If it's a Vectra S2, I'll probably put 1 battery backup on it, or say an MP40 because it'll last quite a while. If it's an M2, I'm probably going to put 2 battery backups. If it's an L2, I'm probably going to chain 3 battery backups, right? So I can actually make sure that thing's going to run for 8 to 12 hours before I have to switch over to that generator. And that's just a Honda 10,000K generator. Works pretty well for us. Inverter one, so we're not getting the crazy fluctuations. Okay, now I'm going to go more into our redundancy of alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium maintenance. So again, like I said, all my clients, everything I've done, we start with Kalkwaster first. When Kalkwaster isn't meeting the demand, we start supplementing with a calcium reactor. Again, I don't need to go buy the biggest calcium reactor. I just need to buy a calcium reactor that's going to work with my method, right? Which can be a smaller one, more affordable for what I need. And we're using the controller method like I explained before. We also use the mag pellets. We are using Reborn and Julian's mag pellets. They have been the best product for us to date to actually using the calcium reactors for burn and everything else. 2-part with trace. So this is absolute last resort. It gets very expensive at scale. When you're farming and you're going through this like crazy, you're using, what's the other one, Tropic Marin, Alpha Reef. That stuff it gets expensive. So this is why this is last. Now, on the bigger systems, all the systems I have this Trinity going, Basically, I'm barely doing any dosing with this. I may be adding 15 mils a day to a 1,500-gallon system. But all this is doing is balancing out these two. These two can get a little erratic. This one can balance out. If I lose the CO2, right, tank runs out, I can go into the apex and bump this up a little bit if I'm, say, down in Orlando at a show or something, right? I can adjust that and maybe have Sophia go up and pour a couple jugs in each one if the reservoirs need some more stuff. So this allows me redundancy in my alkalinity and calcium, which is super important. We want to keep them up to where they need, especially for the aquaporas and the other SPS we're growing. Okay, next. So just images, right? We use these old school calc reactors. There's many different options. Then we go into the calcium reactor. Notice I am using the extra secondary chambers. I like to make sure that we're blowing off any extra CO2, letting it burn out through. These you never really change the media in. They barely go anywhere. But if this one starts getting really low, then I might start burning this one and these two, right? So I have redundancy there as well. But it's just really more for the benefit of not putting in that super low pH water back into the system. And then just this simple little, apex doser with the DDR for our two-part. Now with the two-part, the other thing I'm using two-part for is I'm doing the alk and the calcium, but I'm also adding the A plus and K minus, right? So I'm adding trace elements here. So this is how I'm adding trace back into the systems. We don't do many water changes. When we do water changes, it's mainly when we're exporting coral out to our clients. Other than that, or coming to shows. Other than that, we're pretty much not doing water changes very often at all, unless I need to siphon out detritus or clean stuff. Okay, redundancy. Cold spares. I gotta have something on hand for everything, right? At least one or two pieces just in case something goes out. I've learned the lesson the hard way, especially nowadays when parts are getting harder to source. A lot of times aperture's just out of stuff, and I can't get something that I need for like 2-3 weeks to a month sometimes, right? And so I try to keep everything on hand. If I use one, if I replace something, I buy another one. I make sure I get another one to stock it the next day, right? So I gotta have these things on stock. Vectras are super important for return pumps, need them. And these things are super sensitive. How many times have you guys cleaned a Vectra and it doesn't start again? Right? And then you got to tear it apart again, put it back together, tear it apart, and then finally you figure out the right threshold of how to turn those little bolt screws to where it's not too tight, and then it runs. So MP40s, 60s, heaters, radions, CO2 tanks. I always have at least 2 spare CO2 tanks on hand filled up. Apex sensors, everything. I at least have 1 or 2. I got a whole shelf just full of spares. Okay, next. All right, now I'm going to talk about some tips, just things that one of my former students, he actually works now as one of the main lead tech support people for Apex. So he kind of asked me to do all of these too. So numbers are just abstractions. You have to remember this, representing the current state of what we were trying to measure. So 42 in base 10, hopefully we all remember our base numbers, is the same as 2A in base 16, which is hexadecimal, which is the same as 52 base 8, which is octal, which is the same as 00101010, which is a bit string, right? Or a byte. They all represent the same value. So when we're looking at numbers on sensors or automation equipment, you have to remember this. These are abstractions that humans created to measure something. What is that something? Some element, right? Don't compare different brands, right? We hear so much of Hanna versus Apex. My Apex is not reading the same as my Hanna. My Trident doesn't read the same alkalinity as my Hanna does. They're not gonna. They never will unless you calibrated the Trident to the Hanna rather than using the calibration solution they gave you. And that's what I do. I calibrate my Trident to my Hanna, right? And then I use a reference solution on the Hanna because you can't calibrate the Hannas. So you buy the reference solution, which gives you the margin of error you're currently running at, right? So all these things have a margin of error. It could be 0.1 on either side, 0.2 on either side, 0.01, whatever. You have to remember that your Hanna and your Apex both have a margin of error. So if your Hanna is reading 8.41, right, and your Apex is reading either 8.5 or 8.32, they're probably good. They're probably reading the same value. It's just you're dealing with a margin of error. And those can swing even a little bit more and still be the same. Shoot for stability when in an acceptable range over a period of a day, not a hard target value. So we go for like 8.2 and 8.4 in pH, right? We get the swing. We're going between 8 and 8.5 on alkalinity. In temperature, I've already told you how we swing the temperature. Your corals will become more resilient for this. The more you give them a little fluctuation, the more resilient they're going to become. This is why you guys can take our corals home usually and put them in a wide range of stuff and they're going to survive. Versus if you buy something from somebody who's redlining everything or who's just running it at a certain pH, they're going to be used to that. When you go to move them into a tank that has a different pH or a different alkalinity, they're probably going to suffer a little bit. So think about this. Just make your corals more resilient. Prioritize alarms and alerts. So this is bad in the apex. If you look at your email alarm alert, or even when you're programming anything, the next line takes precedence over the first line. It's all serial. It's all linear, right? Especially for your alerts. So make sure that the things you want to make sure you're alerted of first are at the bottom of the list in the email alert. Say, you're not really caring much about the pH swing, but your return pump, if that's got an error, you want to know that's going on, or your Trident or something like that. So make sure that's lower on the list in the error list. Okay, and then you got to read the Farkin manual, right? I'm not just talking about the basic Apex manual. Read the comprehensive manual. It will teach you all about the seasonal stuff, how to program them. And just go through that. There's so much good information there. Some of it is showing back to the older, pre-2016 Apex units. They haven't quite updated it all, but it's still a great reference, and all the stuff is applicable. Okay. So here's some references. I'm an academic. I got to give my references where it's due. Some books. Again, internet. Read books. Read books. The internet's too fast, too much information. You will get a solid understanding of what you're trying to do here. You'll be able to put a better plan together. You'll have references at your fingertips. You won't have to burn out a computer because you get it wet, or a phone. Marine and Fish Invert Aquarium by Albert Thiel. I guarantee you there's probably only 2 or 3 people in this room that know that book. Right? Albert Thiel? That book's like $300 on Amazon now. That's an awesome book. That was one of my first back in the day when I started reefing. So imagine somebody like younger than her reading Albert Thiel's book as the de facto standard of how you're learning, aquarium. That was me. Reef Aquarium Series, volume 1 through 3. Julian, it's the textbook for reefing. Stand up, Julian, please. I mean, seriously, I learned so much from this man just by reading his books. I'm honored that he's sitting here listening to this talk. Same with Joe. Honored. So yeah, those essential reading. If you want to learn how to do stuff, you want to learn about equipment, read those books. They haven't gotten to the newer stuff like the automation of the LEDs, but the foundation's there. They're super good reading. Corals, a quick reference guide. Again, another Julian book. That's still in print, right, Julian? No, but you have copies out there earlier, yes or no? Anyway, he could probably find you some if you're looking. Indo-Pacific Corals, just for identification. Corals, Australia, and Indo-Pacific. Reef Invertebrates, an essential guide to selection, care, and compatibility. That's a CalFo book, another good one, and Robert Fenner. Book of Coral Propagation. These 2 books, again, amazing books. I just had my intern here. Some of you might have met him. He's doing we're doing a coral identification project for trying to scientifically identify the genus and species, all the coral on our farm. Scientific names are the way to go. Common names, I don't want to get started. This is the original vision of Anthony Kaufel. The first book, spiral bound. I think he did it on the back of his toilet. I'm not sure. But I got one of the first editions when he let us out. It's all signed. Both of them actually are first I got signed from him. This is the book to read. It has no pictures, so much information. I think you can still get it on Amazon for $60. If you don't have this book, buy it today. And then buy Julian's books too. The second book is the book that the masses made him publish because they wanted pictures. Very different book, but still good information. This book is $300 on Amazon right now. Both are out of print. Get this book. If anything, today you leave from here, buy Julian's books and buy this book. Okay, and then this is the paper I was talking about, Introduction to Broadcast Coral Spawning Ex Situ Closed System Microcosm Design and Husbandry by Jay Craggs and a whole bunch of other good guys. It's open. You can read this. It's freely available on, I think, ResearchGate. They have it right there on their website as well. That goes into a deep dive about the seasonal temperatures, the lighting, and all that stuff, and how they did it. I replicated that, then I tweaked it to my needs. So definitely a good read there. And then Wet Web Media, probably another maybe 3 or 4 people in the room that know Wet Web Media from the past. Go here. If you're a new reefer and you're looking at the internet, just go here and just look at some of the old stuff. Find out what a plenum is. Find out how people used to do reef tanks. You're going to get so much good history here that it's worth the deep dive just to go look in and see what's going on. Okay, next. And then the next generation. I can't have redundancy in my farm without spawning off the next generation, right? So these are just, my kids have been going to coral shows. She's been going since she was 4 years old. She's made a lot of the frags that people have bought over the years from our farm have gone to many people, and she's been a wonderful help. My sons as well have been doing things, and that's them when they were really little, one of the trips. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sophia. So again, she's been doing this forever, and she's going to talk a little bit about what being in this community has done for her and how it's helped her grow. So Sophia, oh, you need the microphone. And then we will answer questions at the end. Wait, did I put that? Is it upside down or is it good? Okay.
You gotta turn it.
You're good?
Yeah. I can't remember a time when I didn't have a tank in my room.
Hold on.
I can't remember a time when I didn't have a fish tank in my room. I've had African cichlids, clownfish, axolotls, and then I had a 10-gallon water box, and now I have a 40-gallon Fiji cube reef. These are my aquariums. So this is the tank I had before my current tank, and then that's my axolotl Goldie. Starting out, I've been helping my dad at the coral farm for as long as I can remember. I help with feeding, cleaning glass, fragging corals, and taking care of the farm when he's away. I've been helping my dad at coral shows since 2017. All of this has helped me learn the basics of business networking and interacting with customers. So these are some of the coral shows I've been to. Assunta Aquatics is my business. I make handcrafted critters. I sell frags and plants and bracelets as well. I have so much fun at coral shows, seeing their familiar faces and talking to all the customers, and most importantly, spending time with my dad. So these are some of my critters that I've made. My goal is to become a marine biologist and a teacher, work with dolphins, turtles, and dive in big aquariums in the ocean, and make a difference. My path: to continue working hard and become my class's valedictorian, read as many books about marine science and aquarium keeping as possible, continue keeping my own reef tank and helping my dad at the coral farm, and participate in different science camps like Reef Relief Explorers Camp, which I'm going to this summer, and the VIA Junior Aquarist program, which I participated in the past. I will also continue building Assunta Aquatics and participate in trade shows like Reef-A-Palooza. And by doing all these different shows, I've been able to do so many things, like go to Reefapalooza. I mean, like going to Niagara Falls. My advice: even if you're tiny, you can dream big. Don't let anyone stop you or say that you can't do something, because that's not true. One day you'll make a difference.
Okay. So she got accepted to the Reef Relief Explorer Camp down in Key West, and it's 3 weeks from now, I think we're going.
Yeah,
It's a competitive program for kids, I think 14 to 17, and it's a very limited space. They might have like 13 kids, 14 kids on each trip, and they do 2 weeks of it. So she had to write application, write a little letter, get references from teachers, and she was accepted down there. And they do a whole week of diving, and they go to islands down there, and they look at coral, and they learn how to do marine biologist stuff. So super proud of her for doing that and setting her on her path. And she's also done the VIA Aquarium, where there was some pictures up here, where she spent a day, actually 2 days she did, we're working with one of the aquarists there and learning how to clean the ray tanks and do different things with the aquariums there, so she had a super experience with that as well. So proud of her. But again, if you want to get a hold of us, thank you. Contact information here if you guys want to get a hold of us at all. We're not doing Facebook much anymore. It's really getting bad, so I'll talk to you offline a little bit if you want to know more. I'm a PhD in computer science with security. I'll talk to you a little bit offline. You can hit me on LinkedIn. That's fine. And we're going to start a YouTube channel. Actually, we're going to post this video on our YouTube channel, so it should be up there later this week once we get it all set. And then hopefully maybe going forward, if there's an interest, we might start doing a little more short videos about the automation processes in the farm. We'll see. That in time. Questions? Anybody? Yeah.
During your RO production, you're using the aeration of all-gas and sulfur?
It's basically the problem is the sulfur, what is it, sulfuric hydrogen sulfide, and then also the CO2, right? The hydrogen sulfide kind of goes out on its own, but the CO2, it takes a little while to bubble that out, or just let it settle.
That's before your DI?
That's before the DI. So we go straight out of the RO membrane into that, and then from there we have a separate ATO pump that triggers, that pumps into the final holding tanks.
You have a booster pump to keep pressure high?
We do have a booster pump on the main input, yeah, because it's a well. We don't have really good pressure, so we have to do the boosters. Yeah.
You said that was 24 hours later?
24 hours, and I do that as a manual process. I'll do the automated to fill up the initial aerated jug, and when it hits the center, it shuts off. The next 24 hours later, I'll go in and I'll trigger on the pump that moves from that tank to the main holding facility, and that'll fill up to a center and automatically shut off. So there's a manual process there I have to trigger, because I don't want to, I want to smell that jug before I move it, right?
Is the smell test, like how'd you come up with the 24-hour?
It basically smell, and I can start telling when my DI filters, besides looking at the TDS meter, as soon as I smell a hint of sulfur, I'm over 0 TDS, because it's coming through. So yeah, it's pretty much how we automate it. We got to use the air tank. Now I don't change DI filters for 3 months now. I was going through them every 3 weeks. Now it's like 3 to 6 months, depending on the RODI unit I'm using, just by using the aeration. So it's a huge difference. That carbon dioxide really depletes those DI stages. Anything else? Yeah.
When doing the lunar cycle, have you ever gotten a scoliomen to go sexual in the tank?
I have had my pearlberry spawn. It's all over the place. But I think that's when I was originally testing using the higher temperatures. Because I did run at like 80, 82, but my electric bill was going through the roof, right? Because I was heating constantly. Not at that low temperature, no. I won't be getting spawn. That's by design, because I don't want the spawning to happen. But yeah, I mean, I believe it will trigger if I keep running it at the right process, because we are doing the proper lunar triggers. But yeah, read that paper if you're really interested more in that, because they have a lot of good work there, and then just adapt it to your system like I did in order. I wouldn't leave just yet. We have a gift for everybody to hang around. If you leave, you're going to miss out. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sitting through our talk. We don't want to go home with our quorum. And we basically have a gift for everybody. $25 free coral if we have any left. Some friends are working our booth. I don't know what's left, so it's while supplies left. If we have any $25 frags left, you bring this, you get one free. Otherwise, it's $25 off any coral in our tank. And right now, we're lowering these prices like crazy. So please come up, grab one. We just want to say thank you for sitting through our talk. And then, yeah, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.